Good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Moniz. I'm the technical director at ICCBA. It's perfectly acceptable to say ICCBA or ICCBBA. This is one in a series of webinars that we have been hosting. We began hosting webinars last year and have been delighted with the response. We welcome suggestions for future topics. We hope that this particular webinar will be a repeat event from year to year. And Ask ICCBA, very live, ask us questions on the spot. We got several questions ahead of time, so thank you for that. A few housekeeping things. If you have not attended one of our webinars before, on the top right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a little arrow that's kind of pointing to the left. You want to open that, acknowledge that message, and then you'll be able to have access to the question and answer feed. What will happen with your questions is that you'll get an automated response, and then Betty, our executive assistant, will incorporate that into the flow. We've already kind of ordered some of the questions we've received so that things will flow in kind of a logical manner. We do have questions from a variety of medical product of human origin areas, several topics. This is a technical workshop, so we'll maybe touch on registration a little bit, but we'll touch on more technical things. Later this year, we're going to have a vendor-focused webinar, and so some of the questions here are very IT-specific, very vendor-focused, and we will have vendors, a workshop that's specifically targeted to vendors. Of course, anybody can come, but that will be August the 6th. We're not advertising it yet, but you can go ahead and mark your calendars for that. And past webinars can be found on our website. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our marvelous technical staff. I've been privileged to be at ICCBA for 4 years, and the folks are just wonderful, and they keep me on the straight and narrow with making sure I understand the standard. I'm Karen Moniz. I'm the technical director at ICCBA. We have Robin Wilkinson, who is the deputy technical director, new to our staff this year, but with a long history of working in IT and blood banks. So that's fabulous. We have Erwin Cabana, who is our technical manager, and he is the mainstay. If you want to know anything about the standard, we can ask Erwin, and he can actually open a paper copy of the standard and point, to the correct page and point to it. You may have seen that at booths at conferences. Then we have Monica Ferry, who keeps our documentation all well and good, and actively, makes sure that we stay on track with our reviews, something that we've been actively catching up on this year after post-COVID interruptions, that sort of thing. We have 2 information standard specialists. These are the folks that you normally speak with when you reach out to our help desk. We have Ryan Ruiz, who has been, Ryan, you've been here longer than me, so like 5 years, right? Yeah. And Alex Gartlis, who's also been here a number of years. And then we have Betty Perez, our incredible executive assistant, project manager, keeps us all on our toes, helps make sure tasks are done on time, etc. Yeah, and she will be actually moderating this session, not me, and she'll be asking the questions. All right. So I think, unless I forgot something, I think we're good to go.
Thank you, Karen. And I think we can just get started with the very first question. And this is a general question. What is the ISBT 128 standard, and why was it?
Okay, so I'm going to tell a little bit about the origin of this, of the standard. The standard has been around for about 30 years. And it grew out of a need that was demonstrated for globally unique identification of donation events. We had a conflict in the Middle East that really drove this issue home, and that blood was pouring into that area from all over the world to support the efforts there. And they could, and they did receive units of blood, disparate sources that had the same global unique identifier. So as we talk about unique, we always want to think about in terms of your bubble, unique in what context. And with ISBT 128, the donation identification number, because it's based on the facility identification numbers that are issued by ICCBA, those numbers are indeed globally unique. We also needed to work on harmonized terminology. Codabar had been in place, but we were rapidly, the industry, I say we because I've been blood banking that long, the industry was rapidly running out of available codes. And that's not the case with the ISBT 128 product description code data structure. And we've got harmonized terminology. So that's how it came to be. And it was an outgrowth of efforts by both the AABB IS Committee and the ISBT, the International Society for Blood Transfusion, their technical committee, recognizing the need, starting down this path, and then realizing, okay, we're going to need an organization that can maintain and develop this standard over the years. And here we sit 30 years later.
Thank you, Karen. We have another general question. Robin, who uses ISBT 128, and in what industries or sectors is it most commonly applied?
Okay, so originally designed to identify blood banking products, as Karen said, ISBT 128 has expanded to provide terminology, coding, and in some cases labeling standards for other medical products of human origin, such as cellular therapy, tissues, human milk, and organs. And that translates to over 6,000 facilities in 77 countries on 6 different continents for facilities that are registered as users of the ISBT 128 standards.
Thank you, Robin. We do have another general question. What are the potential benefits of having a uniform system for worldwide naming, coding, and labeling of human products across all countries and continents? How can the implementation of ISBT 128 be achieved in regions that have limited access to technology?
Okay. Thank you for that question. So standards for terminology and mechanisms to exchange data, such as via barcodes or electronic data exchange, help to allow sharing of products across borders and disparate health systems. So one can say an apple is an apple, an orange is an orange, this blood product is this blood product, this cellular therapy product is this cellular therapy product. As for achieving implementation of standards in areas with limited access to technology, I can give examples in the blood banking field. For example, facilities can use pre-printed donation identification number labels and pre-printed blood product labels from vendors who are registered with ICCBA. We want to make sure that they're registered with ICCBA so that they're implementing the standards properly and accurately. These labels can be used for collections and for processed products. ICCBA also offers reduced licensing fees for low to middle income countries based on World Bank classifications. And also we offer an implementation guide, which is IG 041, which is titled The Use of ISBT 128 in Resource Limited Countries. And this can be found on the technical documents section of the ISBT128.org website.
Thank you, Robin. We have an implementation question for Ryan. Where can I find guidance on how to implement ISBT 128 at my facility?
That's a great question, right? So something that we recognize is that implementation process at each facility may vary just on a number of things, right? So we can't get into the details as far as like added direction decisions. That's basically strictly on your facility. But we can offer implementation guide. So I'm going to share my screen with everyone to kind of just show where that implementation guide is and what is to be offered. So if everyone can see my screen. So here's our main webpage. Under the ISBT 128 support link here, we'll see this implementation toolbox. We click here, it navigates us to IG47. We're just going to go ahead and go forward in. Here's this implementation toolbox that kind of just provides like that guidance and information to if you're just first, wanting to know what ISBT 128 is or the implementation process. This is something we would recommend to definitely review. So it covers information on what is ISBT 128, how to go about the steps of registration, a quick implementation plan. And again, with everybody's implementation plan being slightly different, we provide this general outline to, for your team to kind of, form a team, develop a leader, register with our organization, become familiar with resources, identify equipment, software needs, and obtain funding, as well as whatever's needed for your complete implementation process. Now, with this step here, 1 and 2, right, forming your team, you identify, okay, this is who we want to manage this project, and we're not sure if we need to register right away. There's always could be back and forth with the organization and us. We can set up calls. We can schedule team events, just something so that if you have any questions, you can be there and be available to help you along this process. Let's see here. Sorry. Back to, I wonder why it shook me back. Sorry about that. Anyway, so again, as we keep going within this implementation toolbox, we'll see common ISBT data structures, just something to become familiar with. We include information on the FIN database, facility identification database, as well as product description code database. Product description code database holds all ISBT 128 PDCs, classes, attribute values, and attribute groups. The ISBT product lookup program, this database feeds this program. So if you're ever looking, if you know a code, or if you want to build a product description to find a code, you can always use this to help you. These two, the PDC database and the lookup program, are password protected. So in order to gain access to these items, you have to be registered and have your member login. We also have other things like sample barcodes, an audit tool for cell therapy. So if you are implementing for cell therapy, we have this tool here. It's really an interactive and printable checklist to go through your process to verify that everything is in compliance with the ISBT 128 standard. Some of our core documents here are mentioned, which is ST1 and ST2. ST1 holds information on all ISBT 128 data structures, some coded information, as well as some of the label text. Again, this is something we reference a lot when reaching out to people wanting to know about the standards. ST2 holds information on all ISBT 128 terminology, so classes, modifiers, if applicable, attribute groups, and values for all MPHO types. This terminology is what builds our international ISBT 128 product description codes. So we use these terminology and we tell people to become familiar with it and review it when building their product descriptions. Some things that we also have in here would be the implementation guide on the donation identification number. And this DIN, donation identification number, is important for product traceability. And so as you go through this, you'll start seeing key information. And one of those great things that once you register with our organization, you will receive a facility identification number that gets utilized within this DIN. And then here at the bottom, we'll see IG43, which we provide an implementation guide on the validation tool for ISBT 128 data structures. So this is kind of a quick guide on do's and don'ts on encoded barcodes, just kind of checking, making sure everything looks appropriate, and you can always see how you can benefit from viewing it. So
Thank you, Ryan. We're going to move on to the next question. And the next question is for Robin. And this question is, we are using a number of technologies and machinery which need upgrade and updates of both hardware and software. These equipment are servers, barcode readers, laboratory machines like NAT and blood processing. And I'm wondering how these technologies can be integrated with ISBT 128 updates. Ideally, we need video manuals and training on how we can embrace ISBT 128 technologies.
Okay, thank you for that question. It's a great question. Generally, the data structures in ISBT 128 don't change. So especially in laboratory instruments that generally only read the DIN, in my experience, won't necessarily need to be updated monthly or anything like that. Sometimes changes do occur such as the introduction of the chain of identity identifier. It's a relatively new data structure for ISBT 128. We do encourage you to contact your software vendors and work with them, ask them to implement these new changes in the ISBT 128 standard. And we also ask that you ensure that your vendors are registered with ICCBA. Now, some of the systems have updated their systems with the chain of identity identifier. To your question regarding video and manuals and training, we do take that to heart. The webinars that we are doing, like today's webinar, we've done 3 other webinars, and we have other videos that we're trying to do. We really have an initiative to really try to improve training for ISBT 128 standards. And we definitely welcome suggestions on training topics.
Thank you, Robin. And the next question we have is regarding implementation, and this is for Karen. What are some common challenges organizations might face when transitioning to ISBT 128, and how can these challenges be addressed?
Okay, one of the common things I hear is, "Oh, this costs money," right? And if you look at the fee schedule, the cost of registering and being licensed with ICCBA is not high, but we understand that the cost of implementation can be high. Okay, because you have all this training to do, you have software to purchase, all of these things is to do a fully integrated system. You have to do your validation. That can take, staff time, that sort of thing. So the key there is to make a validation plan, use the resources that are available on our website, and you don't have to be registered to start reading and learning about the standard. All the standards and all the IGs are there. You just need to be registered to actually put them into place, okay? Look at what product description codes you're using. Maybe if you're in a resource limited country, you're only making 3 or 4 kinds of red cell products, or maybe you're only making whole blood and packed red blood cells. Take a look at the scope of what your implementation is going to be. So taking that time ahead of time to plan, what are your needs? How can you implement? Make sure you're capturing those key traceability elements, and you see my fingers moving. So I always want to name them: the donation identification number, the product description code, the division identification number identifier, and in some cases, a facility processing code. And those things are the things that are mandatory for accurate traceability. And choosing which vendors. We have a vendor lookup tool on our website right now. You want to choose vendors that are registered and licensed with us. I'm so pleased to let you know that we're enhancing this program this year. We're going to be providing our vendors with the opportunity to have their own separate page if they choose, okay? And it will be fed via a questionnaire. And it's going to be able to detail what data structures they're supporting. Are they live at a site? That sort of thing. It will never be like the drop-down box to compare one vendor to the other, and we're never going to ask them how many sites they're live at, but just the question, are you live? Do you support data structure XYZ? That sort of thing. Do you support concatenation between the DIN and the ABORH? Just a couple simple things like that, so that as you're looking for vendors, both software label vendors, any other kind of vendors, will be enhancing how we interact with them as well. You'll be able to learn more about them before you start your search for making changes. And so it's really taking a step back to learn about the standard. And not everybody needs to go into the weeds on the standard, but I recommend anybody involved in implementation of ISBT 128 look at ST001, which is all the data structures, and ST002, which is all the terminology. They're long documents. I just want everybody in your project to have looked at the table of contents. And so that way they understand the depth, can develop a basic understanding of the depth, breadth, scope, and purpose of the standard. So that's how I see my helpful hints for getting started.
Thank you, Karen. We have another question regarding frozen stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
If you find there is an error on a frozen product and need to relabel the product, is using backup pre-printed labels that are not ISBT 128 okay to use versus creating an ISBT 128 new label since the label will not stick to the bag?
Okay, I would have to get into a few more questions with this questioner, because if we're talking about a backup label, that won't stick to the bag either. So maybe I'm not understanding a piece of the question. It is vital that the information be scannable, that it also be correct. And I'm an old blood banker, and I'm not real fond of tie tags, but I would say generate another ISBT 128 label and have it on a tie tag. And this is not this is not from ICBA. Okay, this is from Karen, the blood banker. All right. And so I would check out things with your quality systems, how they want to manage it. But I would not move towards a non-compliant ISBT 128 label, because that might confuse the next person that handles that product.
Additionally, ISBT 128 label or not, sometimes there's a technical difference between frozen. I know the question said frozen, but frozen between frozen and cryopreserved. A lot of times, if the product you're referring to is cryopreserved, just removing that product out of that doer and exposing it to make that correction could compromise that product, because you're going to take it. It's going to be a huge temperature difference in room temp, even in that minute that you're going to try to relabel. So you want to take that into consideration as well. If it's cryopreserved versus frozen. I think frozen, there's a little bit more flexibility in exposing it out and maybe putting a tie tag, or if it's encased in a carton or something like that, you can maybe pre-label the carton if that still fits in the freezer. But definitely maybe add a note in the system electronically that to draw attention to this error. But ultimately, you want to save the product.
Yes.
Thank you. And we have another question, Karen. With a variety of software systems such as Meditech, WellSky, Sunquest, etc., for blood bank transfusion services, what efforts are being made to ease the transfer of products?
Okay. So ISBT 128 data structures are the same, whether they're implemented in one system or another. They should be implemented in a manner that includes the data identifiers. We have new standards on electronic transfer of information. They should, the software vendors should be utilizing that if they're transmitting things electronically. We have the MPHO unique identifier, all sorts of things that have been developed to lay the groundwork for a smoother transition of information from one system to another. Because of this surge of information that kind of makes this more upfront and center, that's one of the reasons why we want to do a vendor-focused webinar, to make sure that everybody is aware of some of the updates, some of the things that we're looking at for standardization. We've also been actively involved with external organizations, HL7 Fire, Release 5 from last April. It's not normative yet, but there is a lot of information there about biologically derived products and how to transfer information.
It looks like Karen froze. Additionally, what ISBT 120 is, it's about standardization. So you want to make sure that all your software, whether or not, let's see what examples they gave you. They said Meditech, WellSky, but there's a variety of them. But if everyone implements the ISBT 120 data structures correctly and follows the specifications, that interoperability of those units, whether or not whatever system you're using, it should be able to send and receive to one another.
Thank you for finishing that answer, Erwin. And we do have a general question, Erwin. How many iBanks are registered with ISBT 128?
Thank you. I saw that come in earlier, so I opened up our FIN database real quick and did a filter. And as of now, in our latest facility data identification database, we have 145 ocular tissues facilities registered with us, and we've assigned FINs to those 145 facilities. Oftentimes, we get the question between registered and implemented. It's really hard to gauge full implementation or partial implementation, which facilities have implemented, but I can at least say we have 145 facility identification numbers that we've assigned who've identified themselves as an ocular tissue facility.
Thank you, Erwin. The next question I have is for Monica, and this is a general question. How does the ISBT 128 standard address the unique needs and requirements of different countries and regulatory agencies?
Thank you, Betty. So the standard is designed to be flexible, allowing different countries to implement it in a way that aligns with their specific regulatory requirements. This means that countries can adopt the standard while maintaining compliance with their local regulations. ICCBA actively collaborates with national competent authorities, regulatory bodies, and professional societies through various technical advisory groups to ensure that the standard meets their specific regulatory needs. This collaborative approach helps to ensure that the standard not only ensures globally unique identification, but is also adaptable to local and national regulatory frameworks. Also, which is very important, is that feedback mechanisms are in place to allow users from different countries to contribute to the continuous improvement of ISBT 128, ensuring that it remains relevant and responsive to diverse regulatory needs around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And now a general question for Alex. And this is in regards to registration and licensing. Where will I find a step-by-step process for registration with ICCBBA?
All right, thank you for that question. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick, so just bear with me here. Okay, so on our website, we offer a guide for registration and licensing for both facilities and vendors. And you'll be able to find that by navigating to our website, isbt128.org. And then to access that, you will want to hover your mouse over the registration and licensing drop-down menu, and you'll find it under the facility or vendor registration option. And then this will highlight the 3 main steps that you will need to complete in order to complete your registration. First, you'll need to download the appropriate form for your organization, either a facility or vendor registration form. And then you will need to fill out that form with the appropriate information, and you'll need to submit that to ICCBA. Once you've submitted that, it'll get reviewed, and our accounting department will send you a like a dummy fin, so to speak. That way that they could give you your charges for your annual licensing fees and your registration fees. And then once that is completed, the ICCBA team will allocate you your globally unique facility identification number or your vendor ID.
Thank you, Alex. Erwin, we have a question on technical documents. How do I navigate to the correct document on the ISBT 128 website?
Okay, unmute. I think the best way to answer this is let me share my screen, and I'll go to our website and I can navigate us there. So all of our documents are listed, and there's links to go to them on our website. And I'm just waiting for the screen share to go. Okay, it looks like it's sharing. At the top, we have our drop-down menus. And the one I always go to, this is the fastest for me, is I go to Technical Library, and we have our drop-down, and we have a table of contents. And from there, we list them in order of the document number. And we list our standards first. You'll see them prefixed with the ST for our standards. And then we also have implementation guidance documents, and those are prefixed with an IG, and those ones are listed in order as well. And you can see that there's a link right next to each one. So that's how I go to it. It's the fastest way for me. I just go to one of these links, and then I click it, and it takes me right to the document.
Thank you, Erwin. The next question I have is for Alex, and this is in regards to blood banking. Sometimes I get questions from bench texts, such as code EA554 seems to have the same word description as EA553. Are they the same? And I'm not sure how to answer that. Does ICCBA release a list of product code and descriptions so that registered members can easily find the answers to these questions?
It's a great question. Thank you very much for submitting that. So I'm going to answer this in a couple different parts. So first, does ICCBA release a list of product code and descriptions? Yes, we do. So we update our PDC database roughly once per month. And when we do that, we also publish the database itself, as well as a text file that contains all of the product description codes and their associated descriptions. You would be able to download that and view that there. In addition to that, we do have a tool that we offer, our product lookup tool. So let me just take the screen over one more time here. And you'll be able to access our product lookup tool on our website. I first want to mention that you will need to be logged into a website member account. You'll notice that this button up here has my name populated in it. If you do not have a website member account, you can find instructions for registering for one by hovering over the registration and licensing tab, and you'll find the website member accounts information under this option. But in order to quickly and easily discover which product description codes you are looking at and their associated descriptions, you can use our online lookup tool, which you will find underneath the lookup tools drop-down menu under the find product information option. And if you scroll all the way down, you will find the interface for the tool. The top portion of this tool will allow you to input a known or given PDC. So in the case of this question, we were asked it about EA533 versus EA534, I believe is what it was. So it looks like the descriptions are the same, but just at a quick glance, it looks like one would be a first container, whereas 4 would be a second container. So you would be able to find the very small differences in these descriptions by utilizing this tool, by inputting the 5-character PDC from the product that you receive.
Alex, can you do a
Real quick, yeah.
It's EA553 versus EA554.
That's correct. Yep.
I apologize. EA553. So it's a pooled platelets product, and EA554. So one looks like it's
similar.
Yeah,
One
the
has
difference
5
in
units. Yeah.
Sorry, two people were talking at the same time. Erwin, can you clarify what that
I'm
was?
saying they look very similar, but this EA554 has that attribute of 5 units. So it indicates a specific number of units in the pool pooled platelets. So if you jump back to EA553, please, Alex, you'll see those 5 units disappear. So this one's a little bit generic. It can be used for your pooled platelets for whatever number of units. It allows that flexibility, whereas EA554 only pertains to your pooled plates that that had only 5 units pulled into it.
Thank you guys for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And Alex, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, also, I just want to let anyone know if you have any questions about product description codes, say you just want to, touch base, you can always email myself or anyone in our technical department through our help desk or through our personal emails. We're happy to get back to you and provide this exact description identifying the 2 differences.
And there's a previous webinar, Cracking the Code, that goes pretty in depth into how to use that lookup tool, if you want to find that on our website.
Great.
Alex, we did have another question since you were sharing your screen. Why do I need to be licensed with ICCBBA?
So we license the ISBT 128 standard in order to maintain and develop the standard. And Sorry, I just had a complete brain fart. So we license the standard in order to maintain and develop it. So the standard is an ongoing living entity. It's not, as Karen alluded to earlier, and I believe some others did as well, the terminology is constantly evolving. We're adding new data structures, and that takes time, that takes resources. So in order to meet those needs, we license the standard to our users.
Thank you, Alex. And Karen, we have another general question. What if there are potential new standards, considerations, or changes that might be on the horizon between, for example, now and 2027?
That's a most excellent question. We're constantly thinking about what is next, how can we help leverage the benefit of this standard. So we've spent some effort over the last couple of years talking about the medical product of human, the MPHO unique identifier that helps tie things together from an electronic standpoint. That's not new, but it had been kind of buried down in the standard. So we've been popularizing that, socializing that to help people understand that if you want to transmit messages about MPHO, this is the way you should be doing it. We added a chain of identity identifier in the not too distant past. New data structures are not that common. Okay, we had COI identifiers data structure 40, and we actually have 36 data structures at this point in time. So what's constantly being developed is new terminology. And so you want to stay tuned, subscribe to the newsletter so you see the updates to products in your area. As far as other new standards, we're looking at enhancing the electronic transfer of information. We have a data dictionary that's growing once or twice a year to really help us pigeonhole how you transmit the data elements. As you know, on the label, multiple data elements are often combined in one data structure. For example, the product code data structure has the product description code, the type of donation perhaps, and the division identifier all contained within it. And an electronic message, you would be sending those data elements separately, most likely. So we're trying to enhance that electronic communication. So stay tuned for that sort of thing. Our newsletter is a good source of information. We're also looking at potentially adding data elements that won't go on the label, things that will help you track your inventory status, things that might help us with biovigilance. These are really early stage discussions that are happening with the technical advisory groups right now. And if that continues to move forward, then you'll be seeing publicity about that. New data structures, new standards always go out for public comment. And so just stay tuned to our website and to our newsletter. Make sure it's going to your inbox and not into your junk mail.
Thank you, Karen. Next, we have a question for Monica. How can the traceability of data be documented, ensuring the information through ISBT 128 labels? Is any registration applied manually if the software does not have the application to collect information?
Okay, thank you for the question. So if I understand correctly, so I apologize if I don't. So in the case that you receive a product from another facility and your facility cannot enter electronically into a software, the great thing about ISBT 128 is that all the units labeled with it has what we call a globally unique identification with basically 3 elements, which is the donation identification number, the product description code, and the division code. So in the event that you cannot scan those elements, as long as you document those elements, you will be able to trace that. With that information, you can trace where the unit is coming from. So let's say in the worst case scenario that leaves a facility with ISBT 128 and it goes through a shipping facility then to a hospital, as long as the traceability information is documented, you will be able to follow that path. And we have, as my colleagues have mentioned, many documents, wonderful documents that provide comprehensive information about the globally unique identification. So I hope that answered this question. I don't know if somebody else would like to add something else. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Next, I have a question for Erwin, and this is in regards to blood banking. Can I request a product description code for platelets that are washed open and or plasma reduced and contains a bacterial monitoring or testing attribute?
So most facilities are bacterially monitoring or testing their platelets, and that attribute is applied. And so that attribute actually is being used for a couple purposes. One is just to indicate as such that it's been bacterial monitored, but two, it's also being applied as an indicator for an extension of an expiration of your platelet product. So you have this attribute that serves to extend the expiration of the product of the platelets, but then you wash the platelets, you it becomes an open system, or you plasma reduce. Now those three modifications or processing steps that you might have done, wash, opening, or plasma reduction, it conflicts with that. What that does is it shortens the expiration of the platelets if you wash it, remove the plasma, or open the system. So you can't have conflicting attributes within the same description. So the short answer is no, you can't have that. What tends to happen is we drop off the bacterial monitoring attribute, because once you wash, open the system, or plasma reduce, the extension of the expiration for the platelets, it no longer applies. So you'll need to find another product description to relabel it that omits that bacterial monitoring or testing attribute.
Thank you, Erwin. And we have a few more minutes before we wrap up, so we'll keep going. Robin, the next question is in regards to how do we request new product description codes? How do we introduce new product description codes into our blood establishment software system?
Okay, thank you for that question. It really depends on your system. So some software systems may utilize the ISBT 128 product description code database as is, meaning they've incorporated that database into their software. The database is downloadable, as Alex mentioned earlier, from the password protected section of the ISBT128.org website. And other software systems might just use the comma delimited data file to upload into their system. In my experience at the blood bank I worked at, we would download the comma delimited file into an Excel file for reference, easy reference, and then manually add the new codes that we would be using or expect to import from other facilities per our system's configuration process. And then, of course, we would follow validation processes to make sure that the labels printed properly, that the change mapping was correct. And again, please subscribe to our newsletter. That will help you stay up to date on the changes to the product description code database, which is published 10 to 12 times per year, sometimes more, depending on shifting initiatives in blood banking.
Thank you, Robin. The next question we have is for Karen. How does ISBT 128 address emerging technologies and trends in healthcare, such as cellular therapies and regenerative medicine?
Thanks. That's a good question. As you can see, we have a pretty small staff. This is the ISBT 128 technical staff, all here and present for you. We have other staff that help manage the office and do a couple of other things. So we cannot do this alone. We cannot stay abreast of everything. We rely heavily on our volunteers. We have technical advisory groups in most of the subject areas, and some are geographic. And we rely heavily on them to help keep us abreast. These groups meet fairly routinely, some more often than others. You can check out what these committees are on our website. Again, it's committees is one of the things on the banner there, and you can go see who's there. So if you are working in an MPHO field, such as cellular therapy, you can go look at the cellular therapy coding and labeling advisory group, see who's on there, and maybe you're associated with FACT, and so you want to reach out to your FACT representative, in order to understand what's happening. And we also put the summaries of meetings there too. We do a lot of things asynchronously with our tag members because they are from all around the world. We're trying, this is a global standard, and we work hard to maintain this as a global standard. So we need input from across the globe. So we rely on our tags. We also rely on other groups that pull in additional people to the table. For example, the standards coordinating body. I actually have a call right after this with them about things in the cellular therapy manufacturing arena. And that brings additional voices to the table. And always you can reach out to our help desk. If you're aware of something else that's happening, let us know, if you have a need. And it's not just about terminology. It's about how do I transfer this information, or we're having this hiccup. And we can help point you back to your software vendor or ask questions, that sort of thing. We also go to a large number of conferences. It's been delightful to get back out there after COVID. And you'll see several of us next week in Vancouver. We have a booth, excuse me, at the ISCT conference there. Several of us will all be going to the EBAA conference in Kansas. And so we're trying to do more and more international meetings. Next year, we'll have a renewed focus on smaller regional meetings as well, because we recognize that not everyone can get to the larger conferences. And then just relationship building. It's really important to be able to talk with each other and find out what's going on, what are the needs. The hybrid label for collection, for further manufacturing, for cellular therapy came out of discussions about, oh my goodness, we've had apheresis for a long time, but now we have manufacturers coming in and they all want their own label. And that's how that hybrid label came about, because it's got the ISBT 128 information on one side and the manufacturer supplied information on the other. It's got a space for that. If you read Standard 18, you'll see a lot of if-then kind of questions about, this is where this information would go on that label. And it is being adopted. And we're seeing that kind of go through from the beginning, the middle, and the end. I'm squeezing a little bit in about COI right now because I know we're getting close on time. And on the hybrid label, you have the chain of identity identifier also. And I think we might have a question or two on that as well. So I'm going to stop talking.
Thank you, Karen. This is a lengthy next question, so please be patient. And it's for Erwin. We are in the process of establishing partnerships with multiple distributors for our products. Depending on the distributor, we may need to adjust the labeling on our devices to include the distributor's name and address. In such instances, is it necessary for us to obtain a new device identifier, DI, for each product sold to a different distributor? Furthermore, we might consider rebranding our products for individual distributors according to the preferences of the, scrolling down one second, according to the preferences of the distributors. However, the core composition and accessories of the product will remain unchanged. The modifications will primarily involve updating the labeling to incorporate the new brand name and distributor information. Again, would we require a separate DI for each distributor under these circumstances?
So I can't give you a definitive answer, yes or no, of that requirement. I would defer actually to, I believe it's still CDRH within the FDA that manages the medical devices and the submission of the device identifiers to their Good ID database. But what I can tell you is each device manufacturer, in this case, you assign your own DIs. And there's, with an ISBT 128 device identifier, there's three elements to it. There's a facility identifier that is assigned by ICWA, so you use your facility identification number. There's your standardized product description code that essentially in that question, it mentions that it's essentially the same product, so that wouldn't change. And then the third element is a facility defined product code. So, and that's the middle element. So that provides you the mechanism to differentiate between these different products that are, I guess, packaged differently and distributed to your different distributors. So using that facility-defined product description code, you can provide that differentiation, and it would be you would just need to create a new DI if you go that route. I don't want to speak in too much detail because it's been a while since I read the requirements of the medical devices, but I just remember there are packaging the requirements that revolve around packaging with devices, and if the packaging changes or maybe it's only to the extent of the configuration, you would need a new DI. And if that's the case, again, the facility identification number element stays the same. The ISBT 128 product description code element stays the same. It's just that middle element, which is the facility defined product description code, you would just assign a different local code to that, and then essentially giving it a new DI. And then if you do have a new DI, you'd have to submit it to the good ID. I know I'm not giving you your answer you're wanting. Is it required? I can't answer that because I think we'd have to defer to the CDRH for that particular question.
And different countries may have different regulations about how devices are labeled. In fact, some things might be regulated as devices in one country and not as devices in another country. So it depends on where you're located too, and what those regulations are. The ISBT 128 data structure for devices is for devices that do contain medical products of human origin. The example I like to say, because it's simple, is a tendon with a suture attached, that sort of thing. You will see errors in some of the databases that are out there, not ours, I hope there's no errors in our databases, where people have ticked off that ICCBA is the issuing agency and the product does not even contain any medical product of human origin. We're actively working with those facilities to get those kind of things removed. And so devices are really for medical products of human origin are really a niche within a niche within a niche, if you can think about it that way. And so we'd be happy to expand on the answer to the specific question after the webinar as well.
I could also look back. I have the reference because I know they have a really responsive and really good help desk, and they've posted that. And you can just post maybe even that exact same question that you've posed to us, and I can also post it myself. And sometimes they'll see the same repeat questions, and they'll get back to it draws more attention to it, and maybe we can get a definitive answer on that one from them.
Thank you, Erwin and Karen. We have a short amount of time, so we're going to try to wrap this up with the next two questions. And this question is for Robin. Does the validation of every code need to happen individually?
So I'm going to put my blood banker hat on. I would say yes. You want to make sure that your labels are correct according to what you have configured for your for each code. You want to make sure that your change mappings are correct. That when you're making the 5 pooled platelets, that it's properly assigning that 4 code to it instead of the 3 code. But yes, I would, as in my blood banker hat.
Okay, and one question for Ryan. When blood components are exported from one facility to another for further processing or modification, for example, for irradiation, how should these modified blood components be labeled to ensure effective tracking and tracing?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Well, the key elements for traceability with ISBT 128 is the donation identification number, your DIN, right, what identifies the facility identification number, FIN, as well as the some elements of the product code. Product code holds the PDC as well as the vision code, right? So those 3 are important elements for product traceability. Now, if a product from facility A goes to facility B for further modification, facility B could update that lower left quadrant, what holds the product code, with the new product description code that identifies this product is now irradiated, right? They wouldn't change anything to the DIN, right? That would identifies the collection product, but updates to the lower left quadrant as far as PDC and label text can be modified. Additionally, the expiration, right? So if the product that does modification can affect when the expiration date. So in the lower right quadrant or the ISBT encoded barcode for the expiration date and time, that could be modified then to reflect the product. There is an exception to recoding. So if, for instance, if product is fresh frozen plasma, and we have as a frozen code, or if that product is just thawed, then, or if a product is thawed, generally, that's the exception. If the product's thawed and for transfusion, then it may not be necessary to recode. An example of that would be fresh frozen plasma. If that product's thawed and to use within 24 hours, the lower left quadrant can remain the same. The expiration date can be crossed out and handwritten to reflect that for this product. However, that product could be then encoded if it was so fresh frozen plasma thawed for 24 hours, but if it was extended for 5 days, then that lower quadrant would be identified as thawed plasma, recoded, and then the expiration date can also be recoded.
Right.
So when you're modifying and relabeling that product, your system should be tracking what the previous product description code was, and the division code would remain the same. The donation identification would remain the same, but your system should capture what the previous one was and then what the new one is now. And then so now you have a relabeled unit with the same DIN, same division code, but new product description code, and the system should maintain that traceability.
Yeah. And one of the reasons for that exception is for smaller transfusion surfaces, that sort of thing, that don't normally do any type of product modification. So they may or may not have the systems. I know there's critical access hospitals even in the States, in Colorado, that maintain their inventory on a spreadsheet because they only have 10 units and they might only have 2 units of FFP in the freezer, for the ski injury accidents, that sort of thing, to get the folks on the helicopter. And so that's why that exception is in place. We are very, very close on time here. We've had a question on how do we stay up to date. I think we addressed a similar question earlier. Stay tuned, subscribe to our newsletter. Reach out to our help desk. You now have met these folks, right, that are going to be answering your questions, and they do so with extremely rapid turnaround time. I would say if you have a question, a lot of folks might email me specifically because they've met me at a meeting. Email our help desk too, because a lot of times I'm on the road and they can transfer. I mean, they can answer faster than I can. And they'll consult me if needed, but they have the knowledge base necessary. So in closing out, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. We had more questions than we could answer. We'll pull our heads together and try and get the rest of the questions answered. We did have one question about retiring product codes. Very, very few product codes are retired. The last time was a big batch in 2008 when a lot of terminology changed. But again, we're adding new product codes all the time. So again, in closing, 1 minute. Okay, subscribe to the newsletter. Check out our committee pages to stay up to date and stay in touch.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. Just to reiterate, we do have our newsletter. You can find that on our homepage. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the ISBT128.org homepage, you'll find a subscribe now button. We do have a QR code here, and we will be distributing the recording, and you can always contact our support team. Again, thank you all so very much. And if we did not answer your question, we will do our best to get back to you after the webinar. Thank you everyone so much. Thank you, speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.